स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतंगमय। ओम शांति शांति शांति। Let us offer our salutations to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, who came to establish the universal religion. Let us pray to that divine supreme being to lead us from unreal to the real, to lead us from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. As the invocation prayers suggest, we can get peace only when we attain immortality. Only when we realize our true nature. Only when we are able to discriminate what is real, what is not real. When you have that strong will and determination to pursue the path of knowledge, what we call Vedanta. When we are able to take up spiritual life with the sole purpose of realizing our true inner nature, which is the source of peace and bliss. It's only then we are able to enjoy the beauty of our life. Our life is meant to be engaged in spiritual sadhana to achieve this goal, to rise above all disturbing factors and to follow the path of righteousness, not yielding to any kind of diversions or distractions. That means we will have to follow a rigorous, disciplined life. Spirituality is possible only when a person is disciplined, not otherwise. So, heaven and hell are in our own hands. If we are dragged down to the impulses of anger, jealousy, hatred, and all sorts of things, we are creating our own hell. And we do suffer immensely. We suffer unbearable because of our yielding to these impulses and because of our attaching ourselves to the unreal things and because of never ending, never satisfying infinite desires. So we need to know these things periodically. We need to give training to the mind. We need to give suggestions to the mind. We need to feed the mind with all the noble ideas, spiritual ideas, so that they percolate deep inside the mind and then it becomes easy for us. Otherwise, spirituality is only a thing which will be very difficult for us to achieve. Well, that is why Mahatmas come frequently, more frequently. Incarnations come to inspire the people, to rise them from suffering, to show them the life of love, kindness, affection, and all that is noble and virtuous, and to show to the world the glory of heaven. So, it means we have to make serious studies of the life and teachings of these great holy people and put them into practice. Reading, thinking, doing, acting, everything should go systematically. We must provide some time for spiritual sadhana, in spite of all our excuses for so many types of worldly duties we have to accomplish in this world. There may be 1,000,000 reasons, but reasons will not give you peace of mind. Reasons this way. Giving excuses will not give you peace of mind. No use of giving explanations to like that. We must act upon immediately, resolutely, and try to live the life to the best of our capacity, using all our energy. Then, of course, we will find the moment we step into spiritual sadhana, we understand how many hurdles are there on the way. How much we have to struggle, keep on struggle. Would this life be enough to fight all these evils that come on our way to achieve our goal? This one life may not be sufficient because it depends upon to what extent the impurities are there in our mind. So, life is continuous. It's not that we pass away after 100 years, we don't know what will happen to us future. No. Every being is accounted for. Every being has got its destiny. He has to fulfill it. He or she. Whenever I say he, it also means she also. It's easy to pronounce he, so we generally say he. So men, women, all, irrespective of anybody, irrespective of caste, color, creed, race, country, human being. So we have to take on lives and lives and lives. Go on working, working, working. Working towards perfection. So, then only it is possible to achieve our goal of getting real peace. Real peace. Well, coming to the subject, today I am speaking about many faceted Lord Krishna and his sublime teaching of the Gita. Lord Krishna has become known to everyone through the wonderful message of Gita. As Sri Ramakrishna puts it, the whole message of Gita is put in one word. Repeat Gita 10 times, it becomes Tyagi. That means renounce, sacrifice. Sacrifice. Everything is for others. The more you give, the more joy will come to you. The more peace will come to you. Give up everything. Don't possess anything. Then the whole world comes to you. If you want to possess something, you possess. Let the whole world, let me possess the whole world. I belong to the whole world. Not only the particular area, particular county. No. I belong to the whole universe. Do you want to be attached? Be attached to the whole world. Let it be full attachment. That way, we must give direction to our qualities. And Shri Krishna here gives wonderful teaching how to conduct our life, how to discharge our duties, how to behave in this world, how to use our discrimination, how to choose the path of good, how to reject that is bad, and how to practice yoga. Everything is given. There is nothing secret. The only problem is, the serious problem is, we are not doing anything. That's the problem. Simply we are crying for peace, thinking that peace would drop from heaven miraculously on us. If you imagine like that, please remember, you won't get that peace at all, anytime. It is to be achieved through our personal effort. 100% effort is required to get that wonderful peace. And it is possible, it is not impossible. So Sri Krishna's life and teachings have produced tremendous inspiration and brought great peace and joy to the people. Even now, at times, simply I take the text of the Gita and just read a few lines. Wonderful inspiration we get just by reading, just by concentrating on the idea given by Lord Krishna. If we have to understand the message of Gita, it is very important that we should do that we should base our life on some principles. Ethical and moral principles are required so that these spiritual ideas root properly into the mind. And it is very interesting to note that the great teachers are the embodiment of their own teachings, which invest them with power and dynamism. Now we have got Sri Ramakrishna in the modern times as an incarnation of God, the Supreme Being. Once upon a time, Lord Christ came. He gave the message to the humanity. Sri Ramachandra came, Lord Buddha came. All these personages, they came from the same divine supreme source, taking different forms in different periods of time, just to inspire the people, just to show them the way how to fight the evil. Lord Krishna, whatever message he has given in the Gita, himself is a personification of these different yogas which he has given us in the Gita. He is the embodiment of his own teaching of Karma Yoga, of detachment in the midst of intense activity. How much Lord Krishna was involved in the activities, helping Pandavas to fight the Kauravas, who were very terrific and evil-minded. So those evil-minded people are to be brushed up. So without Lord Krishna's help, Pandavas wouldn't win the battle. So how much intensely Krishna was involved in the battle between righteousness and unrighteousness, battle between dharma and adharma. But in spite of his total involvement, he was completely detached. Padma patra mivambhasa. The lotus leaf lives in the water, but the water does not stand on the lotus. Just like that, Lord Krishna showed the life. All through Mahabharata, we get glimpses of his many-faceted, illustrious, wonderful personality. He shines as a great hero, ever ready to fight evil. He is always on the side of the righteous, engaged in doing good, and yet he didn't desire anything for himself. Secondly, Lord Krishna chastises several evil kings to restore dharma, but never seeks kingship for himself. He assists the Pandavas against the evil-minded Kauravas, but when the war was won with his help, he has no desire for power. He installs Yudhishthira, Dharmaraj, the chief of the Pandavas, to be the king. While kings and rulers bow at his feet, Krishna is completely detached. He is simple and easily approachable. This is the quality of the saints, Mahatmas. Anybody can approach. Once you are in, you will see how they are very, very simple, tender, like child. All people flock to Krishna for help and guidance because of his easily approachable quality. So as we find in all great teachers, Lord Krishna combined in himself opposite characteristics. He was a great fighter in the cause of righteousness, but he was essentially a man of peace. Though he was ever ready to put down evil, in his heart he reigned only love and no hatred. In Mahabharata war, he himself did not wield any weapons. And what a combination of humility and greatness was Sri Krishna. He was humble enough to act as a charioteer of Arjuna during the war. There is also the instance of the Rajasuya sacrifice, to which all the kings and nobles were invited. When Lord Krishna, as part of his duty of receiving and welcoming the guests, Lord Krishna washed their feet, because that is the tradition. When the invitees come, it's an honor to worship their feet. So Lord Krishna, he did wash their feet. Sri Krishna's personality is versatile. He combines strength and humility. He is a great warrior and a lover of peace and righteousness. He is loving and kind to the good and the simple, and a terror to the wicked. Vajradapi kathorani murduni kusumadapi. He was as hard as diamond. At the same time, he was as tender as a flower. That is Krishna's personality. He is a loving and devoted son and an affectionate, faithful friend. He is a wise philosopher and a man of action. He is always smiling and cheerful, and yet full of self-control and serenity. His personality is a harmonious combination of head, heart and hands, all wedded to spirituality, to dharma and to the welfare of all. He was concerned about the whole humanity, how they should be helped to rise themselves up. That was his concern. Sri Krishna's many-faceted personality is well depicted in the Bhagavad, another famous scripture, where he appears to different people in his different aspects. To combine these different qualities is a great thing. It is something more than just the different views of a person by different people. Sri Krishna combines in himself harmoniously the human as well as the divine. He manifested his divine power through Vishwarupa, cosmic form, which he showed to Arjuna. The name Krishna comes from the root Krish. Krish means attract, to attract. So Krishna had the tremendous power of attraction. How the tremendous power of attraction could come? Because he was divine. He was the supreme divine being born as Krishna. So he attracted the souls of men and women. He is adored as a supreme divine being. He is great as a yogin, great as a man of action, great as a man of love, great as a man of renunciation. All these things you can find in one person, Lord Krishna. He has pointed out in the Gita, the man who renounces all attachment is a real sannyasin, not simply the one who extremely gives up the world. So, attachment is the way to the world, non-attachment is the way to heaven. Attachment binds you, non-attachment gives you freedom, liberation. So Krishna is a perfect model, not only to the householder, but to the monks also. He harmonizes all the forces within man, the physical, the moral, the mental, and the spiritual. He gathers together and integrates these forces within himself and sends them out in a stream to enrich the life of the people. This glorious stream is the Gita, which bears the imprint of his harmonious personality. In the Gita, we have an integral view of things. Every chapter, is called as yoga. Arjuna Vishada Yoga, Karma Sannyasa Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Vibhuti Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, like that. All the chapters are yoga. Everyone leads to the same goal. They are all various paths, various ways of finding the one reality. Lord Krishna showed that there was no conflict among them. They are but different paths to the same reality. The self-same infinite spirit is the underlying truth in them all, and it is the goal of all spiritual sadhana. The Gita shows this again and again in different ways. We find in the different chapters of the Gita descriptions of the characteristics of realized persons through different paths, and we find that these characteristics are almost the same and have much in common. A man of realization is unattached to everyday happenings. He rises above them, and he is not swayed by pain or pleasure, loss or gain, or other such opposites. They do come. When you are walking in the forest, you can't say, I should go in a path where there are no thorns. Forest way is full of thorns. So like that, world means it is a mixture of good, bad, everything, all sorts of things. It only shows you have to conduct yourself carefully, tactfully, intelligently. That's all that is needed. Do nicely, that way you will enjoy the same world. Instead of criticizing the world, you will appreciate the world. This world was helpful to me in realizing the truth. So, whatever the circumstances, situations, things happen, the man of realization, for that matter of fact, the man of spirituality, remains calm and unruffled, with an unclouded vision. He keeps his mind always fixed on the reality. He is not bothered about things that might happen. Lord Krishna teaches, follow any path. Each one of them takes one to the goal by building up his character in terms of the highest reality. Character formation is very important. Whatever path, whatever yoga you may practice, wherever you may live, whether you live in America, India, Russia, China, without character formation, no spirituality. All the great spiritual teachers of the world realized truths themselves first before preaching it to others. They found their identity with the divine, which is the real inner nature of all mankind, of all beings. The divine reality is the substratum of all existing things, and as such can be found in all things. Ishavasya sarvam jagatyan jagat. The famous statement of the Upanishad. The whole world is enveloped by the divine spirit. In that sense, everything is holy. So this Vedantic idea must be fed into the mind. Gives lot of peace of mind. It clears all types of conflicts in the mind. There need not be conflicts. Conflicts are created by us because of our confused mind, because of lack of guidance and understanding the things. The divine Supreme Spirit, no doubt, is present everywhere, but in human being its manifestation is stronger and clearer. Through human beings we can perceive it more clearly. In the case of one who has had the highest spiritual attainment, it is most manifest because his personality has become spiritually transparent. He pierces through the veil of physical nature and perceives the spiritual reality underlying all existence. There was a Swami who had achievements in spiritual life and had the opportunity of seeing that Swami. He was telling, if anybody comes to see him, he would completely see the person's inner being totally. He could see very clearly the manifestation of the divine power in everyone, whoever comes to him. And seeing the mental makeup of each person, each individual, he would accordingly give instructions so that one can proceed onwards in their way. We cannot penetrate beyond nature by planes and rockets, no matter what speed they may attain. We can wander about in space for ages and ages, but we can never find an end to space or go beyond it by physical means. How far you go in space, still the space is there. We have to break through ourselves and go to the core of our being by penetrating into the deeper layers of personality. If you want to make a breach in nature, and that is what the great teachers have done, they form, as it were, a door through which we can pass to the other side, through which we can see beyond the relative existence and get a glimpse of the infinite. When they reach this state, they find their identity with the divine reality within. There's a famous statement Lord Jesus has said, I am the way. I and my Father are one. Very famous statement indeed. Lord Krishna says the same thing in the Gita. I am the goal and the way. If we go through them, we can see the other side and realize the identity of our soul with the infinite. Here, they speak identifying themselves with the divine. Lord Krishna, as the divine being, you see, it's very important to note that God, that's why Sri Ramakrishna used to say frequently, personal God, impersonal God, both are real. Have anything you want. Do you want personal God? Go ahead. Do you want impersonal aspect? Go ahead. Both lead to the same goal of getting peace and joy. Then why do you bother? Why do you worry yourself? See, a person who appreciates impersonal aspect, he always criticizes the people who worships personal God. He has no business to criticize the people. What he has to do is, why should he waste so much of time and energy in criticizing people? Instead of that, he should concentrate more on the impersonal aspect which he is pursuing. Let him achieve the goal of getting peace and joy. In the same way, those who accept personal God, they worship they criticize those who are accepting impersonal aspect. That's also not correct. That's what Sri Ramakrishna said. God with form is as true as God without form. Don't quarrel over that issue. Now, why the personal God concept has come? It is to make easy for us. All people cannot think abstract things. They need some support, they need something to hold on, to continue their practices. So personal God helps that way. So here, Lord Krishna, manifesting himself as the divine being, says, "Come unto me, and I shall free you from all sin." So he gives the assurance, come on, I take the burden, I will get rid of you of all sins. Only thing is you must come to me, that's all. Those who take refuge in me will cross over the phenomenal existence. It doesn't mean that we have to go to Krishna or Christ as persons, but we can take recourse to Krishna or Christ to realize our own divine nature, in which we are one with them. These are eternal paradoxes. They are indeed great personalities, yet their teachings are so impersonal that they are applicable to humanity as a whole. Though they taught in particular social contexts, their message has a universal aspect about it. Krishna may have taught the Hindus, or Jesus might have taught to the Jews according to the context in which either of them lived, but the message of both is for the whole of humanity. They make their appeal to man of the basis of his inner being. They appeal to man as man. That's why they are called Jagat Gurus, teachers of the world. The universal character is very well found in the Gita. It approaches man on the basis of the constituents of his personality and on the basis of his psycho-physical and spiritual nature. There is no secret about it. It declares again and again, those men who worship any other god, they too are worshipping me alone. Lord Krishna says, I present myself to them in the way they approach me and increase their faith through that very form. All the paths, Arjun, lead in the end to me alone. Some people say that they are monotheists, that their God is the only God and condemn all other gods. Their very condemnation indicates that they are polytheists, for they believe that there are other gods to be condemned. Monotheism does not consist in rejecting other gods, but in incorporating them into the one God, that is, recognizing them as the forms of one God, for there is only one God. If the so-called polytheist believes that God, who is limitless, can appear in many forms, and that in worshipping him in many ways, he is worshipping the only God that is there in a rich variety of ways, then that polytheist becomes a true monotheist and a lover of God and man. So, Lord Krishna says that since in reality there are not many gods, those who worship the other gods will also reach the same goal in the end. And Sri Krishna declares that God is present in all as their very self, the higher self, and they will realize it as such ultimately. However, what man will attain depends on the motive of his worship. If worship is performed for material welfare, God will give material welfare. Mostly people approach God for that purpose. Oh, I prayed to God, but God is not heeding to my prayers. I don't want God. Like that people comment. So, their approach is a kind of shopkeeping attitude, which is not good. But anyway, God listens to our prayers and provides us things what we want. In fact, we are getting so many things. It's all because of the grace of the Divine Spirit. All get what they want. But worship of God out of pure love leads to the goal, to God Himself. When He says, "Come to me," or when He says, "Man will reach me," Sri Krishna speaks as identified with the Supreme Divine Being. Krishna as a human personality is only a very great man, but when he identifies himself with the cosmic divinity, which he has realized as his own true being, he is eternal, infinite. Sri Krishna says, if you worship me in spirit and in truth, you get the highest benefit. Otherwise you will go through various stages and land will ultimately come to me, the Divine Spirit. So, different people may worship God in different ways, but if a man worships with faith, Sri Krishna says, I increase his faith in that very particular line of approach. So we find there are various types of people who realize God in different ways. Sri Ramakrishna got the vision of God through the Mother Kali. He worshipped Divine Mother Kali as that Supreme Being, and he got the vision after living a spiritual sadhana for 12 years, using his whole mind, concentrated mind in meditation for 12 years. He got the result. Sri Krishna has two aspects. Sri Krishna, the person, and Sri Krishna, the Divine Spirit that dwells in everything and every being. As the universal Spirit, there is no personal worship necessary because God is everywhere, God is everything and beyond. When one realizes this, one loves all beings as one's own self and serves them. But very few are prepared or fit for the contemplation on the impersonal aspect. We cannot succeed in this path until and unless we are able to divest ourselves of personality and conceive ourselves as pure spirit. So most people take to the easier path and begin with the worship of the personal God, the Creator and Lord of the universe. To take an example, take the life of Buddha. Buddha taught the impersonal aspect. But within a few years of his passing away, he himself was deified by his followers. That is, he was considered as the deity, and he is being worshipped now in so many Buddhistic temples. It is difficult to worship the impersonal reality. Krishna, as personal God, gives the assurance, those who think of me constantly, I shall look after their welfare. I shall free them from sin. Of course, sin cannot touch the spirit. Only the body, the mind and the intellect are affected by all kinds of blemish. The darkness of sin cannot touch the core of our being, which is the light of the spirit. Even without the intervention of a personal God or Savior, redemption is assured because the spirit cannot be touched by sin. Yet, as persons, we think we are sinful, limited beings. And here is that great being who has projected the universe, assuring us in his personal aspect, come unto me, surrendering everything. I shall free you from all sin. Do not grieve. That's the greatest message of hope given by Lord Krishna. O Arjun, declare unto the world that my devotee will never perish. If we have recourse to God and surrender ourselves completely, we will gradually realize our spiritual nature. This is our birthright, which even death cannot take away this birthright. Shankara, the great Acharya Shankara, tells in his commentary on the Gita, none can destroy the self. Self here means the Atman. Not even God. God cannot destroy the self because he cannot destroy himself, himself being the self of all beings. That's the comment given by Acharya Shankara. Those who do not want a personal God will wash off all sin by spiritual knowledge. What is the spiritual knowledge? Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free, says the Bible. Ye shall cross over the ocean of sin by the boat of knowledge, declares the Gita. And what is that knowledge? It is that our own true nature is spirit untouched by sin. Both aspects are there. We may reach the goal by the knowledge of truth or by depending upon a personal God. Krishna in the Gita teaches that life is a battle. Arjun, in the beginning, he refuses to fight, and Lord Krishna asks him, whence has this unmanliness come, O Arjun? We have to fight this battle of life. The path of external renunciation is not for all. By far the vast majority of people have to live and work in the world. Is there no hope for them? Lord Krishna teaches, work in a spirit of detachment. It is as good as renunciation. Even those who have risen above the necessity of work would do well to work without desire to set an example to others, to transform work into spiritual sadhana. Sri Krishna himself worked incessantly, and he gave the reason why it is important that we should work. He told Arjun, it is the nature of human beings to emulate the great ones. You must be an example before society. Therefore you also must act, but act with detachment and efficiency, without desire for the selfish enjoyment of the fruits of your action. Then action will not bind you, you will remain free. Generally speaking, we have zest in life because of attachment to things. Ordinarily, Our activities spring from attachment and are accompanied by restlessness, followed by suffering. We are driven by desires, and so we are constantly goaded into activities. We are slaves to our desires, and it is not possible for us to sit quiet because we have not found our true divine personality. We are riding the body without being able to control it. When the mind is not controlled, it is like an untamed wild horse which jumps about and throws us off. When we do not attain the fulfillment of our desires, we may sink into a mood of apathy, and our body may sit quiet outwardly, but inside the mind is restless, ready to burst forth at a suitable moment. We do not find peace. What is the remedy? Sri Krishna says, give up all selfish desire. Work for work's sake, duty for duty's sake, love for love's sake. With this idea, you must act upon in this world. We have to cultivate this attitude, basing our activities on the universal spirit, the source of all joy. We should not imagine that we can obtain pleasure from any other source. It is not the senses or sense objects that can give us true happiness. The spirit is the source of all true joy. Any pleasure that we may experience through the senses is only in consequence of the spirit underlying all things. The mind becomes quiet at the moment when a desire is satisfied. Only when the surface of an expanse of water is free from ripples can the reflection of the sun in it be seen clearly. When there are ripples, the reflection is broken up into the tiny fragments. Similarly, when the mind becomes stilled for the moment, when a desire is satisfied, we get a glimpse of the spirit in a flash. In that glimpse, we come in touch with the source of all joy and we experience happiness. But soon the mind rises again into waves, lashed by desires, and becomes unhappy, having lost the vision of the self. Material things do not give us pleasure. It is the joy of the self that percolates through all our senses and mind and intellect. When we take our stand on this self and act in a spirit of detachment and dedication, we find mental rest and spiritual joy. When we work for profit, our attention is focused on little things, but when our work is based on the infinite, all work is uplifted. It is then that all activities become spiritual and work becomes equal in value to worship. The Gita concludes with a statement, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno, Yatra Partho Dhanurdharaha, Tatra Sri Vijayo Bhurtir Dhruvanitir Matir Mama. It's a famous statement. The meaning of it is, where Krishna, the Lord of Yoga, and Arjun, the man ready to fight the battle of life, are conjoined, there will result all good, victory, prosperity, and the best polity. Where our mind is fixed on the supreme reality, when we have become lords of yoga and masters of unselfish and detached action, and when all our powers are used for the good of society, then all prosperity, material and spiritual, will follow as a matter of course. Lord Krishna symbolizes yoga and Arjun activity, and when these two are combined, they must triumph. Thus we find the teaching of the Gita is profound and universal and addressed to man as such. Now to conclude, Sri Krishna was the greatest spiritual teacher who gave the charter of religious liberty to all, harmonized all paths of yogas, made religion easy and brought it to the doorsteps of the common people, made us feel the presence of God in our midst, showed us how to live in the world with poise and equanimity, and placed before us the highest ideals of love, knowledge, yoga and work. He was an embodiment of his teaching and was a center of attraction and devotion to the young and the old, to men, women and children, to kings and peasants, to friends and foes, to jnanis and bhaktas, to yogis and the men of action. And above all, he was the beloved of the gopis, with the divine flute in hand and peacock feather in his crest, and beautiful like a newly bloomed blue lotus, with a smiling moon-like face. So thus we find how many-faceted Lord Krishna and his sublime teaching of the Gita, inspiring tremendously our life, and how it is leading us to the abode of real peace and joy. Thank you all. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. May the Divine Supreme protect both of us, the preceptor and the disciple. May He nourish us both. May we work in harmony with great vigor. May our study be illuminating and fruitful. May we not hate each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.